Welcome to the Sports Passion Podcast.
Oh, blocked by James! LeBron James with the rejection.
And here's your host, Lars Marendorf.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Passion Podcast. Time is flying by and it's already been a month since we had our last all English episode, and so this week we're going to have something in English once again. I've got an interview scheduled with Arthur Staple, who's covering the New York Islanders for The Athletic, so I'm looking forward to talk to Arthur about how the Islanders changed their game after a slow start, and right now the Islanders are one of the hottest teams in the league, so they are leading their division. So it's going to be interesting to talk with Arthur about that, and later on you'll get my take on a sad development, including or involving a referee who made some remarks during a game. So enjoy the show, enjoy the interview with Arthur, and later on I'll talk to you again. So Arthur Staple from The Athletic. So right now I've got from New York, USA on the line, Arthur Staple. Arthur, thanks for coming once again to one of my shows here. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you, Lars, for having me. It's always good to be back.
At Stape Athletic is the Twitter handle. I'll also link your Twitter feed in the show notes there as well. Arthur, we've talked in the preview shows for the 2019-2020 season, and back then you told us how you cover the New York Islanders for The Athletic. Obviously, times have changed now. So could you give us just a short overview of how your covering of the team looks right now? How much access do you have? Do you even have any personal access? Is it all via Skype calls? What is your daily connection to the New York Islanders look like?
It's much different now. They have been letting media into the Nassau Coliseum to cover the game since the beginning of the season, but I haven't taken advantage. I didn't really feel it was safe enough or really worthwhile because, as you mentioned, all of the media for the NHL is done via Zoom for us, just online group media sessions with the coach, with a couple of players each day. We've had a few private conversations orchestrated by the team to do some more in-depth conversations, but it's very much communicating with people via text or phone from home, watching the games on TV from home, and talking to the players from my home. So it feels like we are not as locked down in the States as we were because of the vaccination rollout, but there's still a lot of issues with the pandemic. The Islanders have Noah Dobson, who's been on the COVID protocol list now for about 10 days. So
yeah,
still affecting some teams and causing some cancellations. So it feels like getting back to how we used to cover the team and used to do the beat reporting of covering a team is still a ways away. And it's not the best, but you have to make the best of what you've got, and that's kind of what I'm doing so far.
Are there any plans to let crowds into the arena for the Islanders? I know a couple of teams have people in the arenas, fans there. Are there any plans for the Islanders as well?
Yeah, they started last week.
Okay.
They had 2 games, I think, with 10% capacity. So for the Islanders, that's about 1,400 fans.
Okay.
And I think it went well. You have to have a negative COVID test to get in, and now they've expanded that when they get back from their current road trip to, if you're fully vaccinated, 14 days out from your second vaccination dose, you can show proof of that to get in. So I think that will allow them to start to increase a little bit. And the fact that the Islanders are good enough to certainly look like they're going to be a playoff team, maybe by the time the playoffs are around in mid-May, you could see 25% capacity, maybe even a little bit more than that. So I think there's optimism for growing the number of fans in the building, especially as people, including the players and the coaches and everybody, are eligible to be vaccinated and get their shots. I think we'll start to see more and more fans, and it will coincide with the playoffs, and that'll probably be something that will be very exciting for Islander fans who haven't been able to really go for over a year now.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the circumstances surrounding the team and all teams in the NHL. So let's look right now into how the season has been going on for the Islanders. They started pretty slow. They lost of the first 9 games, they lost 6 of them, and then they had 2 games postponed because of COVID, because the Sabres were affected by pretty much by the Devils at that point.
Right.
Because they were infected, some of the players and the former coach there as well. And after that, the Islanders went not at the beginning on a hot streak, but they started to play better, and then they had pretty much, I think it was maybe the best, but one of the best streaks in the league in this season so far. They won 9 games there. I think from early February on, they won 18 out of 24 games, so they are a pretty good team right now. What has changed at the beginning of February that led to this search for the Islanders back to the top of their division?
Well, I think you pointed out the little break that they had. I think it was 6 days between games.
Yep.
When they lost in overtime for a second time in as many nights in Philadelphia, and then when they beat Pittsburgh at home in the beginning of February for their first game after that little pause. They really, they are a team that thrives on the details of their game. Barry Trotz and his coaching staff are very, place a great importance on making sure that the play away from the puck is very structurally sound, and their forecheck is structurally sound, and that everybody's moving their feet. And that in their own end, the goalies only really face one chance, one shot each time the opposition comes in. And I think they were getting away from that style of play for a little bit in the first month of the season. And, you think about a normal training camp that goes on for several weeks, and even the weeks before that, there are many of the veteran players are back on Long Island skating together in an informal setting, and the coaches set up very detailed plans for a long training camp with exhibition games. And nobody had any of that this year. It was 10 days before they jumped right in. It was a very small group for each team and a small group for the Islanders that was allowed to be there because of the protocols. And I think they just never really found a groove right at the beginning of the season to get into that space where they succeed, which is grinding away at teams, being physical, and making turnovers and really capitalizing on their chances. And they've become not just a team that's opportunistic with not a lot of chances. They generate a lot of chances relative to some other teams.
Yeah.
And I think during that stretch, they certainly benefited from having a heavy dose of the Sabres and the Devils, who are the 2 worst teams in their division. I think they won maybe 10 games out of 10 in that stretch against those 2 teams of their 18 wins. So, but that's what the schedule offered them. And the most important thing in the NHL is to put points on the board for all the games that you play, because as it gets tighter to the end of the season, sometimes those games go to overtime or shootouts, and there's more points for other teams that are available. So I think, they've really taken advantage of the schedule, and they took advantage of that break, and they've stayed pretty healthy with a couple of very obvious problems there, at least of late, but all of it's kind of fallen nicely into place for them in terms of how the schedule's gone. They haven't had a big problem with COVID, and really, like we said, they kind of benefited from the Sabres problem with COVID to get some extra practice time in there at the beginning of February.
Yeah, and You mentioned they are on a roll and they are also generating a lot of chances. Just to back that up with some stats there, they are having the most high danger scoring chances for. So that is kind of not well, I would say that it's unusual to me for an Islanders team under Barry Trotz because they were always known for their defense. But you mentioned they are generating a lot of offense there. Is that something that came out of something that Trotz changed, or is it just maybe also getting the team even getting more used to his style and now being able to produce more offense? Do you see any specific reason for that, or is it just, I mean, you mentioned one thing, it's always good to be on a roll, and when you have games against the Sabres and the Devils, you get on a roll if you're a good team. So um, is it more a byproduct of being hot, or is it something deeper that they are now taking advantage of?
I think you look at some of the high danger numbers, yes, but even some of the more conventional numbers they have. I think it's 4 players with at least 10
Yeah,
goals and one with 9, and the fact that their forwards are now a little bit more um, spread around with the offense. They've never been a team that's so heavily concentrated on the top line. Matthew Barzal is obviously their most gifted player, and he's had a very good start to the year. And Anders Lee, before he was hurt, really
yeah.
looked like the Anders Lee of old. He was leading the team in goals when he got hurt a couple weeks ago. But Brock Nelson, after a slow start, has started to put some pucks in the net. And I think the biggest key to being able to generate so many chances is having a full season of Jean-Gabriel Pageau. He's really brought an extra gear to that forward group. They were missing that third line center for much of last year before they traded for him, and then in the playoffs when he really started to turn it on. And I think this year, especially with the addition of Oliver Wahlstrom, a rookie who's come up and already has 8 goals, and I think 7 of them have come in the last dozen games or so. There's a little bit more balance to their forward group now. They're not relying on their big name guys to score, and I think even their fourth line, which is very well known for being physical and checking well. I think they've combined for 15 goals with Matt Martin and Casey Cizikas and Cal Clutterbuck, who are all guys now in their 30s and may not have been expected to contribute that much offensively. So the balanced scoring is really, I think, the thing that's helped them the most. And each line has had a good run of generating chances and generating offense. So that's been a big plus for them in this stretch.
You mentioned the captain Anders Lee out now for the season with a torn ACL. He was leading the team when he was injured there with 12 goals. So obviously they are on a roll. They are leading their division. So the expectations are high from this season, but also from what I've read from the players, also from last year, because they went into the East Finals. They were 2 games away from the Stanley Cup Finals, so it was pretty close to being able to compete for the cup there. The trade deadline is a couple weeks away, and I don't know. I mean, I've got Cap Friendly open right now. I don't see that they have cap space available right now, but obviously they could get some cap space from the long-term injury reserve, I guess, from Lee if they want to. So do you see them making a move with that money being available there? And if they make a move, what do you think that move would look like? I've heard Jack Eichel, not Jack Eichel, Taylor Hall, to be someone who they could target, but that's a lot of money that would come in there as well, and he's a rental. So what are the moves that you would expect from them now until the trade deadline?
Yeah, they did put Anders Lee on LTIR, so they
Okay.
think they've got that $7 million cap hit to work with, and could open up even a little bit more space if they needed to with putting some players on waivers or sending people down. So you start with a player like Taylor Hall, and I think the thing that benefits them right now is a lot of the players that are either pending unrestricted free agents or at least players that are seemingly available from teams that are starting to fall out of the race. A lot of them are forwards that play on the wing, and the Islanders are very set at center right now, and clearly with Lee out, that really weakens them on the wing, and they were already pretty weak there to begin with. So they have a lot of targets that they can look at. I think Taylor Hall is certainly a legitimate one for them. He's never really been on a team that's as good as this Islander team. He's played with some very talented players over the years in Edmonton and in New Jersey when he won the MVP, but I don't think he's ever, been a part of such a well-oiled machine as the Islanders. So I'd be curious to see what the return would be for that kind of trade and whether he would fit well with them, because they do need someone dynamic, especially to play with Barzal. And then maybe you look a little bit, guys that are a little bit cheaper that might cost a little bit less in trade. It's maybe someone like Kyle Palmieri from the Devils, who's a very good scoring winger and kind of that net front big guy like Lee was, and Lee has been. And I think if you're looking, Lee was their captain. He's their emotional leader. And if you're looking for some sort of character and leadership from a veteran type player, there's been names that are thrown around. Ryan Getzlaf in Anaheim has a no move clause. He's also a center, but would he want to take one last charge at a Stanley Cup? That would be an interesting name to think about. I think Dustin Brown from the Kings, his name has been out there. The holdup, I think, with him is that he has another year left on his contract, and anybody that's got term left for the Islanders, it becomes more of an issue just because of the expansion draft that's coming up in the summer with Seattle. Plus, they're going to be back right into LTIR probably starting next season because they need new contracts for their really good rookie goalie, Ilya Sorokin, one of their better defensemen, Adam Pelech, and Anthony Beauvillier. So a lot of the considerations that Lou Lamoriello is making for now is do you make a trade and take somebody off the roster and replace them maybe with somebody better that could be here beyond the season, or do you just try to trade futures draft picks or maybe prospects to get a Taylor Hall or a Kyle Palmieri who you're renting for a few months to try to go for a Stanley Cup?
Okay. From a German perspective, the Islanders had two German players last year, Thomas Greiss and Tom Kühnhackl. Greiss left for Detroit, but also they didn't sign him. So you mentioned they got a new goalie in there. So Sorokin is pretty much their goalie of the future right now. So they are set in net. But Tom Kühnhackl is in their AHL team in Bridgeport, so he's playing there. He had a shoulder injury, so he was not signed to an NHL team. Do you see him having any chance of coming back there? I know he worked out, I think, with Dennis Seidenberg, who's also around the Islanders, from what I've heard. So there is still a little German connection there. Do you see Kühnhackl having a chance to come back to the team? You said all those lines are producing, so he would obviously be someone who's maybe just playing for the third line or the fourth line there. So any chance that he might join the team later on for a playoff rush?
It's certainly possible. And I think part of the reason that Kühnhackl has been able to stick around the Islanders for the last few years is that ability to play well when the games get more important. Having two Stanley Cup rings and being a contributor to those wins in Pittsburgh a few years ago makes him a valuable commodity when they get to the playoffs. And it was unfortunate that he got hurt. He started the summer playoffs in 2020 as a guy who he played the first two games for the Islanders against Florida in the preliminary round, and then got hurt and ended up needing surgery and leaving the bubble before they really went on their run. But I think that shows that Barry Trotz has a lot of faith in what he brings, especially that time of year. It would require him to sign an NHL contract. I think he's just on an AHL contract right now, but he has been playing for the AHL team in Bridgeport. And that's a big thing because they have a lot of young guys. I think there's over 30 players on that Bridgeport roster, and they only play 24 games this season. And the fact that they want Kühnhackl in the lineup, I think, shows that Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz want him to have some games to be ready, and just in case he's, and the fact that he's not on the taxi squad is more a situation about his contract status. But the fact that he will have played at least a few games in the AHL before the end of the NHL shows, yes, there is, however outside a chance that it is, there is a chance that he could be part of the group that stays around and is kind of in reserve just in case there's any situation with COVID in the spring when the playoffs start or injuries hit, he certainly would be one of the first guys they would turn to.
Okay, so would be great to see him back there. Right now, they're making news. Draisaitl last year, Grubauer is pretty hot right now for the Avalanche there. So good from a German perspective. Obviously, the Tim Stützle hype around Ottawa. So there were some news there in the offseason as well. So would be great to have Kühnhackl back there on an NHL ice. So looking forward to maybe joining him, the Islanders, later on. Arthur, we talked a lot about the Islanders now. So there was news today about what was called an unfortunate incident or unfortunate remarks from a referee, Tim Peel, who said pretty much that he had to call, or he wanted to call a penalty against the Nashville Predators in a game against the Red Wings. Yesterday was that game. He was immediately banned and banned for life by the NHL. To put that into some context, he was due to retire in April after the regular season. So it's not that this is a young referee, an up-and-coming referee doing something wrong there, but just your opinion about this. I mean, sometimes it looks like a referee calls a penalty just to make up something, or to say, okay, I called two penalties on the other team. Now I've got to call a penalty on this team as well. But what's your opinion on this situation, and maybe what could that mean for the referees and the way the games are called from now on?
Yeah, it's definitely an unfortunate situation, and I've been guilty of it on Twitter, or reacting to what seems like missed calls, or indulging players and hearing them out about missed calls, or calls that are made that they feel like weren't properly called. And I think every player has several stories about that, but I think the best referees are the ones who can have a dialogue with the players and the coaches and explain themselves. And I think everybody in the league understands that it's a very difficult job. There's so much going on at such a high speed on the ice. It's hard to keep track of everything. And the concept of the makeup call, and hearing what Tim Peel said was definitely unfortunate. And I don't think it's something that should really be discussed, but I think it's something that exists. We don't see a lot of the majority of the NHL games are not 7 power plays to 1 normally. I think a lot of the games that we see in recent years are 2 each way, or maybe 3 or 4 if it's a busy night. But and I think the specifics of being an official, an on-ice official, change a lot from year to year. What the emphasis is, I think in recent years you've seen a lot of cracking down on attempting to crack down on hooking or slashing across the hands to disrupt a chance. But I think you've also seen a move away from calling interference away from the puck when players are dumping the pucks into the zone. Everybody has their own particular viewpoint on specific areas of officiating. And I think to be an NHL ref where you're hearing complaints from all the players on the ice and all the coaches on the bench, maybe even at once, and differing opinions and a lot of input, and being closely rated by the head of officials to see if you can succeed in your job, and hearing almost all negative comments from fans and even from media, it seems like a very thankless job. And I think in this instance, and I think you're seeing it now on social media with players being asked about this, or coaches, and I think to a person, they're all saying the same thing, which is this is a very difficult job, and the ones that we appreciate the most are at least the ones that'll have a conversation with you. And if you make, they make mistakes, we make mistakes, and to toss somebody overboard so quickly for a mistake seems wrong. So I think you try to take your cue from the players who are most directly impacted by what the officials do or don't do, and if they're feeling forgiving about this and thinking that it's a little bit excessive, then I'll go along with that and say, Tim Peel he's been a unique referee for a long time. I think he makes some calls that aren't commonly made, or lets things go that aren't always let go in the modern NHL. And like you say, the fact that he was retiring next month, to me feels like a private scolding for him, and maybe missing a game or two, but allowing him to still go out and retire on his own terms might have been preferable. And I think a lot of the calls I read about from people on social media saying call the call the rule book as written, or make a call in overtime of a game 7 of the Stanley Cup final as you would in game 1 of the regular season. That's not human nature. We don't operate that way. I think if you called an interference or a hook or a slash on the hands in game 7 of a Stanley Cup final in overtime, that would be a much more unhappy
That's a
situation
lot of pressure.
than if you let it go. So I feel like the judgment of the officials it's a tough situation for them to be in, to see everything or process everything so quickly, and also adapt to the changes that the league wants them to make in terms of emphasis. So it's definitely unfortunate, and I think a reprimand would have worked here, but maybe not a complete dismissal of a ref who's has the respect of a lot of players and coaches after all his years in the league.
Yeah, very good statement there from you, Arthur, especially regarding a game 7 or an overtime. It always it takes a lot of guts for a referee to make that call, and he has to be backed up by the league there if he makes such a call, because usually what I hear is that let the players play and let the players decide the game is what people are saying, which is wrong also, because if you're hooking a guy and he can't score, or if you use that to score yourself, it's not let the players play. It's a penalty, but still, like you said, there's a lot of difference between calling that in a regular season game and calling that in a playoff game or even a Stanley Cup Finals overtime. So, let's see how maybe this will change something. I think what's good is people talk about that now. The players are talking about that. The coaches are talking about it, and maybe it leads to more talking on the ice as well, as you mentioned, which would be good sometimes for the league and for the game there as well. Arthur, thanks a lot for your expertise, especially regarding the Islanders there. And like I said, at Stay Athletic is your Twitter handle. I've read a lot of your articles there, a lot of Islanders information there, but also sometimes regarding the league in general. What I like about the Athletic, what you guys are doing, is sometimes you get opinions from different team reporters there, team play-by-play guys, or the team followers from your colleagues there as well. You interact there as well. I don't know. Have you been on to the Athletic podcast as well? You guys have a pretty new show there with Haley Salvian in there as well.
Yeah, I did my first appearance with Haley and Ian Mendes just the other day.
Okay,
I think that's a sign that even in Canada they're starting to talk about the Islanders. That's how I gauge where the Islanders are in the standings. They're good enough for folks in Canada to take some time away from talking about their teams to talk about the Islanders.
Okay, yeah, I've got some episodes queued up there, so looking forward to hear you there as well. Arthur, thanks a lot. As I always say in those times, stay healthy. I hope that you will be able to go to the games without feeling kind of insecure there pretty soon. So I hope that everything goes well there with the vaccination in the US. And again, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you, Lars. Anytime. Looking forward to our next appearance, hopefully under more normal circumstances in the world.
Welcome back, and now you're gonna get my take on the Islanders and on that referee situation as well. There were a lot of points Arthur talked about, so just something added from my side. He talked about the Islanders being a deep team. They are looking like a team that is set up for the playoffs, and you saw that the last 2 years where they made some runs there, like I mentioned, into the Eastern Conference final last year, so pretty close to being in the finals. And he said that they are a deep team, and you can see that obviously in the players scoring there, scoring the goals. You also have a lot of players contributing with assists there. Obviously, very unfortunate situation with Anders Lee out there for the year. But if they can use that cap space, if they can use the long-term injury reserve, and get a player like Palmieri and probably, I mean, I don't know, Ricard Raquel, someone who's able to score there for them, that's going to be a big benefit for them, and they are going to be a team that is very, very hard to play against in the playoffs. And they got always good defense. I mean, a Barry Trotz team, they have defense, but they also have a very good 1-2 punch, a very good goalie tandem there with Varlamov as a proven veteran there, and with Sorokin as the young hot goalie. Their stats are very, very good. Both of them 92% save percentage there, 3 shutouts for Varlamov, 2 for Sorokin. He's got the lower goal against average. So they are set in goal, and they are a team that is, yeah, like I said, poised to make a run. They are a very, very good team, and they are a team that I would say that not a lot of teams want to play in their division, the East Division. Obviously one of the most balanced and maybe the toughest division, from the regard that you have 5 teams there that are right now competing for those playoff spots. The Islanders, if they get hot, they might join the run there as well. They have 2 bad teams, but still, if you look at it, the Devils are just 6 points or 8 points out of the playoffs there. So, yeah, a very good division there, and the Islanders, a very good team there. The other topic we talked about, obviously, Tim Reel as a referee being caught on microphone to say that he wants to give the Nashville Predators a penalty there. Yeah, I mean, Arthur had a lot of good points in there. Maybe you don't have to suspend the referee who's close to retirement for the rest of the season. Maybe you say, okay, come on, we get you out of 1 or 2 games. You don't call any Nashville Predators games there anymore for the rest of the season. You have 1 or 2 games to kind of go out into your retirement, have a farewell tour, so to speak, there. But the league did what they pretty much thought they had to, and I can't really blame them. I mean, if something like that pops up, if there's a referee that seems to be biased or seems to be making a makeup call, you got to act as a league, and your credibility is on the line there. So, yeah, the NHL suspended him and banned him now for life there from the league, which is, like I said, 1.5 months, but they did so, and it's unfortunate. Like I said, hopefully maybe that leads to more communication. I think the league did a pretty good job in the incident with the Blue Jackets, where the goal that should have been disallowed but was allowed because of some technical problems there, calling the war room in Toronto there. So they did a pretty good job back then, and I think that shows that the league is willing to admit errors, pretty much, and say that, yeah, we did something wrong, we want to change that. And maybe they changed the process there, the protocol, how goals are allowed. I think they did a good job there in pretty much erasing the rest of that penalty that was called for the Blue Jackets there. I think they should have even said, okay, you're gonna get your coaching challenge back there, because he had a coaching challenge that was valid and that was true, John Tortorella, back then, and they made an error there. So in addition to the penalty, he should have gotten his coaching challenge back there as well. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I mentioned Tom Kühnhackl. It would be great to see him back there. It's always great to have a lot of German players in there. And maybe, like Arthur said, he's a veteran. He's a guy who knows how to compete, and he showed that last year in the playoffs as well for the Islanders. So he's going to be someone, if they make a call up there, if they have to make a call up in the playoffs, he might be the one who's going to step up there and fill the role there, next man up. And that could be another chance for him to make a deep run there. It's going to be interesting, like I always say about the playoffs. I mean, the Islanders are playing in their division right now. They have their style there. So it's going to be interesting if a team like the Islanders comes out of that division and then plays, let's say, someone from the North Division where the style is a little different, I would say, to what is played in the other divisions there, or the Islanders run into, I don't know, the Golden Knights or the Avalanche if one of those teams is hot there. So that's going to be interesting to see if they can still play that defensive style and generate, like they do right now, those chances there, and maybe that's also something that Arthur mentioned there. Maybe the schedule will show us how good the Islanders really are, because he said that they benefited from playing the Devils and the Sabres a lot. Their upcoming schedule looks pretty tough. If you include the Rangers in those playoffs teams there as well, they will be playing from now on until May the 4th, Star Wars Day. They will play those other teams they are battling for the playoffs. They play Boston a lot. They'll play 3 times. They play the Penguins. I see in there. They play Washington 5 times. So Washington was the team that ended that win streak, the 9-game win streak there. So, but usually last year they played Washington pretty good. So that's going to be interesting. And Washington is the team that is trailing them in the division. So those 5 games, they are going to be very important for them. And then in the end, I mean, they can pretty much smooth out there. They're going to play the Sabres twice, the Devils twice. So if those teams have traded out players, they might benefit from that, because those teams, they will pretty much play for the lottery there, and they can get some easy points in there in the end. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see how real the Islanders are, how much of a threat they are this year. So talking to Arthur, and maybe, like we said, maybe we can make another interview right before the playoffs and see where the Islanders are at. Okay, thanks a lot for listening to this show. You'll get all of the opportunities to follow me and to subscribe to the show in the show notes. I'll link Arthur Staples' Twitter handle there as well. So if you want to follow him, please be free. If you want to follow me, of course, like I said, for all the English listeners, I'm recording an all English episode once a month. So if you want to follow me and listen to interviews with experts from North America, please be free. I would be happy to have new subscribers there. And as always, if you want to rate me on iTunes there, or wherever you are listening to podcasts, that would help me as well. Thanks a lot for listening to this show. And yeah, talk to you soon, and bye-bye. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.